I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by spreadsheets and the soft hum of the office. It was just another day in the life of a data analyst, or so I thought. My name is Callum, and I've always been a numbers guy. They make sense, they're predictable. People, on the other hand, are anything but. That day, I was reviewing the financial reports for my father's company. Vernon, my dad, built a successful chain of upscale home decor stores from the ground up. He's always been larger than life, and I guess I've always been trying to live up to that. As I sifted through the data, something caught my eye, a pattern that shouldn't be there. A significant amount of money seemed to be disappearing into thin air. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe I'd missed something. But the more I dug, the clearer it became. Someone was siphoning funds, and it wasn't just a clerical error. My stomach twisted at the thought. I knew I had to bring it up, but I also knew how it would look, like I was trying to undermine Ethan, my sister Lila's husband, who just so happened to be the operations manager. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, even though I had no proof yet. It was like a shadow creeping over the numbers, tainting everything with doubt. Later, when I got home, I found my mom, Audrey, in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. Her presence was always comforting, a reminder of simpler times. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to sound casual. "Callum, how was work?" she asked, looking up with a warm smile. Same old, I replied, shrugging. I wanted to tell her to unload the burden, but I knew it wasn't the right time. Not yet. Dinner was a typical family affair. Dad was talking about some new store opening, his voice filled with pride. Lila was animatedly discussing her latest design project, while Ethan sat beside her, nodding in all the right places. He always had this air of confidence, like he owned the room. It grated on me, especially now. "So, Callum, how's the analyst world treating you?" Ethan asked, his tone just a bit too friendly. "It's going," I said, forcing a smile. "Keeps me busy." Good. "We need sharp minds like yours keeping us on track," he said, raising his glass in a mock toast. I nodded, my mind still on the numbers, the missing money. I couldn't let it go. After dinner, I cornered Dad in his study. He was poring over some documents, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Dad, can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Of course, Callum. What's on your mind?" he replied, not looking up. "There's something off with the financials," I started, choosing my words carefully. "I've noticed some discrepancies that don't add up." He finally looked at me, his expression a mix of curiosity and annoyance. "Discrepancies? What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything, just that there's money missing. It's significant, and I think we need to look into it." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Callum, you're always so meticulous. Maybe it's just a mistake. I trust Ethan with these things. He's proven himself time and again." I felt the sting of dismissal, the familiar weight of being overshadowed. "I'm just saying we should be cautious. It's a lot of money. Let's not jump to conclusions." "I'll have Ethan take a look," he said, waving it off as if it were nothing. I left the study, frustration simmering beneath the surface. Dad's faith in Ethan was unshakable, and it felt like I was standing on the outside looking in. I needed proof, something concrete to break through his blind trust. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew this was just the beginning. The numbers didn't lie, and neither would I. I had to find out the truth, no matter what it cost. The stakes were higher than ever, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was going to change everything. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I was going to get to the bottom of this, one way or another. Little did I know, the path ahead was full of twists I never saw coming. The next morning, I found myself back at the office, staring at the screen. The numbers were still there, mocking me with their silent accusation. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at the edge of something big, something that could tear my family apart. I decided to visit Lila. Maybe I could find a way to talk to her, to gauge if she had any inkling of what was going on. As I arrived at her apartment, the sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the street. "Callum," Lila exclaimed as she opened the door, her face lighting up with a smile. "What brings you here?" "Just thought I'd drop by," I said, trying to sound casual. We settled in the living room, surrounded by her eclectic mix of art and plants. Lila had always been the creative one, her world full of color and life. It was a stark contrast to the black and white certainty I craved. "How's work?" she asked, pouring us both a cup of tea. "Busy," I replied, taking a sip. "Actually, I've been looking into some things at the company." She raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. Oh, like what? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. Just some financial stuff. Trying to make sure everything's running smoothly. Is everything okay? She asked, her tone shifting to concern. Yeah, just routine checks, I said, forcing a smile. You know how it is. She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. Lila was perceptive, always picking up on the undercurrents. I wondered if she sensed the tension between Dad and me, or if she noticed Ethan's little manipulations. As we chatted, Ethan walked in, his presence immediately changing the dynamics. Callum, didn't expect to see you here, he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Just catching up with Lila, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Good. Family's important, he said, sitting down next to Lila. We should all stick together, right? The way he said it, like a subtle warning, made my skin crawl. I knew I had to tread carefully. Lila's loyalty to Ethan was strong, and I didn't want to put her in a difficult position. Absolutely, I said, nodding. Speaking of family, I've been thinking about Dad's company. It's important to keep everything transparent, you know? Ethan's expression flickered for a moment, a brief shadow crossing his face before he composed himself. Of course. We all want what's best for the business. I left soon after, my mind buzzing with unanswered questions. Ethan's reaction was subtle, but it was there. Something wasn't right, and I needed to dig deeper. The following week, I decided to visit Dad at his office. I wanted to bring up the discrepancies again, to try and get through to him. As I walked through the familiar halls, memories of my childhood flooded back. This place was like a second home, yet now it felt foreign, tainted by suspicion. Callum, what brings you here? Dad asked, looking up from his desk as I entered. I wanted to talk about the financials again, I said, taking a seat opposite him. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I thought we'd been over this. Ethan's handling it. I know, but I can't shake the feeling that something's off, I insisted. I've been looking into it more, and the numbers don't add up. Callum, you're overthinking this, he said, his tone dismissive. Ethan's got everything under control. But what if he doesn't? I pressed, my frustration bubbling to the surface. What if there's more going on than we realize? Dad leaned back, his expression hardening. Are you accusing Ethan of something? No, I'm just saying we need to be careful, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. For the sake of the company. He shook his head, a mix of disappointment and irritation in his eyes. Callum, I trust Ethan. He's proven himself time and again. Maybe you should focus on your own work. I left the office, feeling the weight of his words pressing down on me. It was like running into a brick wall, and I was no closer to finding answers. But I couldn't let it go. I owed it to myself and to the family to find the truth. As I walked back to my car, a thought struck me. What if Ethan wasn't acting alone? What if there were others involved, hidden beneath layers of trust and loyalty? The stakes were higher than ever, and I had to be prepared for whatever lay ahead. I spent the next few days diving deeper into the company's financial records, determined to find the smoking gun that would prove my suspicions. Each line of data felt like a puzzle piece, and I was desperate to see the bigger picture. My nights were restless, filled with dreams of numbers and shadows, leaving me more exhausted each morning. One afternoon, as I was poring over yet another report, my phone buzzed with a message from Lila. Hey, can we meet? Need to talk. Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that made my chest tighten. We met at a small cafe near her apartment. Lila looked tired, her usual spark dimmed. Thanks for coming, she said, offering a weak smile. Of course. What's up? I asked, trying to sound upbeat. She hesitated, glancing around as if the walls had ears. Things have been tense at home, she admitted, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. Anything in particular? I probed gently. Ethan's been on edge. He's been working late a lot, and he seems distracted, she said, choosing her words carefully. I leaned in, lowering my voice. Lila, there's something I need to tell you. I've been looking into the company's finances, and there are some serious discrepancies. Her eyes widened, a mix of surprise and dread. Discrepancies? Like what? Money's missing. A lot of it. And I think Ethan might be involved, I said, watching her reaction closely. She shook her head, disbelief etched on her face. Ethan? No, he wouldn't do that. He's always been so dedicated. I know it's hard to believe, but the numbers don't lie, I insisted, my voice steady. I'm not saying he's guilty, but we need to be careful. Lila looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of her cup. This is a lot to take in. I don't know what to think. I'm here for you, okay? We'll figure this out together, I reassured her, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. As we parted ways, I couldn't shake the feeling that the ground beneath us was shifting. Lila was caught in the middle, torn between her love for Ethan and her trust in me. I needed to act fast before things spiraled out of control. Later that week, I decided to confront Ethan directly. I found him in his office, the door slightly ajar. He was on the phone, his voice low and urgent. I knocked, and he gestured for me to enter, ending the call abruptly. "Callum, what can I do for you?" he asked, his tone polite but guarded. "I wanted to talk about the financial discrepancies," I said, cutting straight to the point. His expression didn't change, but I noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, annoyance, perhaps. "We've been through this. I'm handling it. I've been digging deeper, and it's clear there's something more going on," I pressed, crossing my arms. "I think you know what I'm talking about." Ethan leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "You're making a lot of assumptions, Callum. Be careful where you tread. It's not just assumptions. I have data, evidence," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not going to let this slide." He stood up, walking around the desk to face me. "You've always had a chip on your shoulder, haven't you? Always trying to prove yourself. This isn't about me. It's about the company, the family." I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Ethan's smile faded, replaced by a steely resolve. "You might want to think twice before you do anything drastic. Families have a way of getting messy when things fall apart." I left his office, my heart pounding. His words were a thinly veiled threat, a warning of the chaos that could ensue. But I couldn't back down now. I had to find a way to expose the truth without destroying everything in the process. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized the enormity of what I was up against. It wasn't just about the money or the company anymore. It was about trust, loyalty, and the lengths people would go to protect their secrets. I knew I had to brace myself for the storm that was coming. The stakes were higher than ever, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. But I couldn't turn back. Not now, not ever. The tension in the air was palpable as I sat in my car outside my parents' house, the engine humming softly. I had been summoned for a family dinner, and the timing couldn't have been worse. With everything happening, I felt like I was walking into a lion's den. As I entered, the familiar warmth of my childhood home did little to ease my nerves. Mom was bustling around the kitchen, her usual grace tinged with a hint of worry. "Callum, there you are. It's been too long," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Yeah, sorry. Work's been crazy," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. We gathered around the dining table, the usual chatter replaced by an underlying tension. Dad seemed preoccupied, his mind clearly elsewhere. Lila was quiet, her eyes darting between Ethan and me, as if gauging the temperature of the room. "So, how's everything at the company?" I asked, breaking the silence. Dad looked up, a forced smile on his face. "Busy as always. Ethan's been doing a great job keeping things on track." I nodded, biting back the urge to argue. "That's good to hear." Ethan, ever the charmer, leaned back in his chair. "We've been working on some new strategies. Exciting times ahead." Lila shifted uncomfortably, and I caught her eye. There was something there, something unspoken. I wondered if she was starting to see through Ethan's facade. After dinner, Lila pulled me aside. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sure. What's up?" I followed her to the back porch, the cool night air a welcome relief. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the discrepancies," she began, her voice shaky. "I don't know what to believe anymore." I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Lila, I'm just trying to protect the family. We need to be careful." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I've noticed things. Little things that don't add up. Ethan's been secretive, and I don't know if I can trust him." Her admission was a turning point, a crack in the armor Ethan had built around himself. I felt a mix of relief and dread, knowing that the truth was finally coming to light, but also fearing the fallout. "Whatever happens, I'm here for you," I promised, pulling her into a hug. The next day, I decided to dig deeper into the company's records, determined to find solid proof. I spent hours combing through emails, invoices, anything that might reveal Ethan's scheme. And then I found it, an email chain between Ethan and a supplier discussing inflated invoices and kickbacks. My heart pounded with a mix of triumph and fear. This was it, the evidence I needed. But as I sat there, staring at the screen, a new realization hit me. Exposing Ethan would not only ruin him, but would also shake the very foundation of our family. I was caught between justice and loyalty, and the weight of the decision was crushing. Later that evening, I received a call from Mia, a friend I had met through a mutual interest in photography. Her voice was a balm to my frayed nerves. "Hey, Callum. I was just thinking about you. Want to grab a coffee? We met at a cozy cafe, and as we settled into a corner booth, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. Mia had a way of seeing through the chaos, finding clarity where others saw confusion. You seem stressed, she observed, her eyes searching mine. Yeah, it's been a rough week, I admitted, sipping my coffee. Anything you want to talk about? She asked, her tone gentle and inviting. I hesitated, then decided to share a bit. Family stuff. Things are complicated right now. She nodded, understanding without prying. Just remember, sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's worth it. Her words lingered in my mind as I walked back to my car. I knew what I had to do, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty and potential heartache. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The stakes were higher than ever, and I was standing on the precipice of a decision that could redefine my life and my family's legacy. But one thing was clear, I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. It was time to confront the truth, no matter the cost. The day of Dad's retirement celebration arrived, and the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The office was transformed into a venue fit for the occasion, filled with familiar faces and the buzz of conversation. I felt a knot in my stomach as I walked through the crowd, the weight of my decision pressing heavily on my shoulders. I spotted Lila across the room, her expression a mix of excitement and anxiety. She waved me over, and I weaved through the throng to join her. Hey, you okay? I asked, searching her face for any sign of distress. I'm trying to be, she replied, her voice barely audible over the chatter. This is a big day for Dad. Yeah, it is. I agreed, though my mind was elsewhere, preoccupied with the evidence I had gathered against Ethan. As the evening wore on, Dad took the stage, his presence commanding as always. He spoke with pride about the company's journey, his voice filled with gratitude for everyone who had been part of it. I watched him, feeling a pang of guilt for what I was about to do. And now, Dad continued, his gaze sweeping the room, I'm proud to announce the new Chief Executive Officer of our company, someone who has shown exceptional leadership and vision, Ethan Miller. Applause erupted, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Ethan stepped up, his smile wide and confident as he accepted the mantle. As he began to speak, my anger simmered beneath the surface. He was taking credit for ideas that weren't his, for work that I had poured my heart into. I caught Lila's eye, and she gave me a small, supportive nod. She knew the truth, and that was enough to steady me. I took a deep breath, knowing it was now or never. As the applause died down, I approached the stage, my heart pounding in my chest. Ethan, congratulations, I said, forcing a smile. Mind if I say a few words? He hesitated, then nodded, handing me the microphone. The room went silent, all eyes on me. I just want to say how honored I am to have been part of this journey. I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. But there's something important I need to share with all of you. I paused, meeting Dad's gaze. His expression was curious, unaware of the storm brewing. I've been looking into the company's finances, and I've discovered some discrepancies that need to be addressed. Murmurs spread through the crowd, and I could feel the tension rising. Ethan's face remained composed, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. Ethan has been involved in a scheme to siphon funds from the company. I continued, my voice unwavering. I have the evidence to prove it. The room erupted into chaos, voices overlapping in disbelief and anger. Dad stood frozen, shock etched on his face. I turned to him, feeling the weight of my actions. I'm sorry, Dad, but I couldn't stay silent. Ethan stepped forward, his composure cracking. This is ridiculous. Callum, you're just trying to sabotage me out of jealousy. It's not jealousy, I retorted, my voice firm. It's about protecting what you've built, what we all care about. Lila joined me on stage, her presence a silent testament to the truth. I've seen the evidence too, she said, her voice steady. Callum's not lying. The room fell silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Dad looked between us, his expression a mix of disbelief and betrayal. Is this true? He asked Ethan, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan hesitated, and in that moment the facade crumbled. I did what I had to for the company, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. You betrayed us, Dad replied, his voice breaking. As I stood there, the consequences of my actions unfolding before me, I realized that this was the turning point. The truth was out, and there was no going back. I had chosen justice over loyalty, and while it felt like a victory, it was also a profound loss. The celebration ended in disarray, the future of the company uncertain. As I left the venue, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with sadness. I had done what I believed was right, but the cost was high. Walking into the night, I knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was no longer afraid. I had faced the truth, and in doing so, I had taken the first step toward finding my own path, free from the shadows of others' expectations. After the fallout from the retirement celebration, I packed my bags and left town, seeking refuge in a new city far from the chaos I'd left behind. It was a fresh start, or at least that's what I told myself. I landed a job as a data analyst for a promising tech firm, and for a while I threw myself into work, hoping to find solace in numbers. But the past has a way of catching up, and it wasn't long before the shadows I'd tried to escape found me. One afternoon, as I was reviewing data for a new project, my manager called me into his office. "Callum, there's something you should know," he said, his tone serious. "Our firm has been contracted to audit your family's business." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the room spin as I processed the implications. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, it's a high-profile case. We'll need your expertise," he replied, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. I nodded, trying to keep my composure. As I left his office, the weight of the situation settled over me like a suffocating blanket. The company I'd tried to distance myself from was now my responsibility again, and I was caught in the middle of a moral storm. That evening, as I sat in my small apartment, my phone buzzed with a message from Lila. "Callum, please. We need to talk." We arranged a call, and as her face appeared on the screen, I saw the strain etched into her features. "Callum, I'm sorry to drag you back into this," she began, her voice heavy with emotion. "But we're in trouble. The audit could ruin us." "I know," I replied, feeling the weight of her words. "But I can't compromise my integrity, Lila. You know that." "I'm not asking you to," she said quickly. "But Ethan's still involved and he's desperate. I'm scared of what he might do." Her admission sent a chill down my spine. The stakes were higher than ever, and I was torn between protecting my family and doing what was right. "I'll do what I can, but I won't cover up the truth," I said, my resolve firm despite the fear gnawing at me. As the call ended, I felt the enormity of the situation pressing down on me. I was standing on the precipice of a decision that could change everything, and the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. The next day, I threw myself into the audit, combing through the financial records with meticulous care. The deeper I dug, the more tangled the web of deceit became. Ethan's fingerprints were everywhere, and it was clear he'd been manipulating the data to cover his tracks. But just as I was beginning to see a glimmer of hope, a new complication arose. My manager called me into his office again, a frown creasing his brow. "Callum, we've hit a snag," he said, gesturing to a stack of papers on his desk. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart sinking. "There's been a leak. Someone's trying to sabotage the audit," he explained, his frustration palpable. "We need to find out who's behind it, and fast." The revelation sent my mind racing. Was it Ethan, trying to cover his tracks again? Or was there someone else involved, someone I hadn't considered? As I left the office, the world felt like it was closing in around me. The situation was spiraling out of control, and I was caught in the middle of a storm with no clear way out. That evening, I met Mia for coffee, hoping to find some clarity. Her presence was a balm to my frayed nerves, and as we talked, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. "You're carrying a lot on your shoulders," she observed, her eyes filled with concern. "I just don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice tinged with desperation. "Everything's falling apart." She reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "You have to trust yourself, Callum. You've always known what's right, even when it's hard." Her words resonated with me, a reminder of the strength I'd forgotten I had. As I walked back to my apartment, I knew I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The road ahead was uncertain, and the challenges seemed insurmountable. But I couldn't turn back now. I had to find a way to navigate the storm, to find justice and protect the people I loved, even if it meant standing alone against the tide. The air was thick with tension as I sat in my office, the weight of the impending audit pressing down on me. I knew today was the day everything would come to a head. My phone buzzed insistently on the desk, and I saw my father's name flash on the screen. I hesitated for a moment before picking it up. "Callum, we're here." Dad's voice was gruff, tinged with an edge of desperation. "We need to talk. Can we meet?" I agreed, knowing this conversation was inevitable. As I made my way to the small cafe where we'd arranged to meet, my mind raced with the possibilities of how this would play out. I was about to confront the very people I'd spent my life seeking approval from, and the thought was both terrifying and liberating. When I arrived, Dad and Mom were already seated, their expressions a mix of anxiety and hope. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sliding into the booth opposite them. "Callum, we're in a mess," Dad began, his voice heavy with regret. "I should have listened to you from the start." I nodded, the acknowledgement a small comfort despite the circumstances. "I'm here to help, but I won't compromise my integrity." Mom reached across the table, her hand warm and reassuring on mine. "We understand, Callum. We just want to make things right." As we talked, the door swung open, and Ethan walked in, his presence like a dark cloud over the room. He approached our table, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. "Callum, what are you doing?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "Exposing the truth," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "It's over, Ethan." He laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You think you're some kind of hero? You're just trying to tear this family apart." "I'm trying to save it," I shot back, my voice firm. "You've been manipulating everyone, and it ends now." The tension crackled between us, the cafe's quiet atmosphere amplifying the intensity of our confrontation. Dad stood up, his face a mask of disappointment. "Ethan, you've betrayed us all." Ethan's composure slipped, his eyes wild with desperation. "I did what I had to. You don't understand what it's like to be on the outside, always looking in." "Neither do you. You were never on the outside," I said, the truth of my words hitting home. "You were part of this family and you chose to betray it." As the words hung in the air, the door opened again and Lila walked in, her face set with determination. She joined us, her presence a silent testament to the truth. "Ethan, it's over. I can't stand by you anymore." Ethan's eyes flicked between us, realization dawning. "You're all against me," he said, his voice hollow. "No, you're against yourself," Lila replied, her voice steady. "We're just choosing to do what's right." The confrontation reached its peak, the truth laid bare for all to see. Ethan's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving him as he realized the inevitability of his downfall. In that moment, I felt a shift within me. The need for revenge melted away, replaced by a sense of justice and resolution. I had fought for what was right, and in doing so, I'd found my own strength. As we left the cafe, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Dad turned to me, his expression one of gratitude and respect. "Callum, I'm proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I nodded, the acknowledgement a balm to old wounds. "Thank you, Dad. I just want to make things right." We walked out into the sunlight, the future uncertain but filled with possibility. The path ahead would be challenging, but I knew I wasn't alone. With my family by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. In the end, it wasn't about revenge or validation. It was about truth, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what was right. And in that, I'd found something far more valuable than approval. I'd found my own sense of self-worth. The weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of change and reflection. The audit concluded, confirming Ethan's misdeeds, and he was removed from the company. The news rippled through the business world, tarnishing the company's reputation, but also marking the beginning of a new chapter. I watched from a distance, my heart a mix of relief and sadness for the family legacy that had been tainted. Dad took the helm once more, determined to rebuild what had been lost. I admired his resilience, his willingness to face the consequences of his past decisions. He reached out to me, not with words of apology, but with actions that spoke louder than any admission of guilt. He began to involve me in discussions about the company's future, valuing my insight and recognizing my contributions. One afternoon, as we sat in his office, surrounded by plans and projections, he turned to me. "Callum, I've been thinking," he said, his voice thoughtful. "We need a fresh perspective, someone who understands both the numbers and the heart of this business." I met his gaze, understanding the offer beneath his words. "I appreciate that, Dad. But I've found my own path now. I'm happy where I am." He nodded, a flicker of disappointment tempered by understanding. "I'm proud of you, for standing by your principles." "Thank you," I replied, the simple acknowledgement a balm to years of seeking validation. "I'm proud of you too for facing the truth." We sat in companionable silence, the air between us clear of old tensions. It was a new beginning, one built on mutual respect rather than unspoken expectations. Lila, too, had embarked on her own journey. Inspired by the courage she had witnessed, she made the difficult decision to leave Ethan. It was a choice that took immense strength, and I admired her for it. We spent hours talking, rebuilding our sibling bond over shared memories and dreams for the future. I'm going to focus on my design work, she told me one evening, her eyes bright with determination. It's time I did something for myself. I'm glad, Lila. You deserve to be happy, I said, feeling a deep sense of pride in her newfound independence. Meanwhile, Mia continued to be a source of inspiration and grounding for me. Our shared passion for photography blossomed into a deeper connection, one that transcended the chaos of the past months. She had a way of seeing the world that reminded me of the beauty in imperfection, teaching me to embrace life's unpredictability. One weekend, we took a trip to the countryside, cameras in hand. As we wandered through fields and forests, capturing moments of raw beauty, I felt a profound sense of peace. It was as if the world had shifted, allowing me to see clearly for the first time. Callum, you've come a long way, Mia said, her voice soft yet filled with conviction. You've found your own path. I smiled, the truth of her words resonating deeply. I have, haven't I? It's been a journey, but I wouldn't change a thing. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the landscape, I realized that my journey wasn't about seeking revenge or validation. It was about finding my own truth, standing by my principles, and embracing the people who mattered most. The twists and turns had tested me, but they had also shaped me into someone I was proud to be. And while some questions remained unanswered, I was content with the knowledge that life's uncertainties were part of its beauty. As we packed up our gear and headed back, I glanced at Mia, feeling grateful for her presence in my life. She had been a guiding light, helping me see beyond the shadows of my past. In the end, the resolution wasn't about tying up every loose end. It was about understanding that true success lay in living authentically, free from the shadows of others' expectations. And in that, I found my happiness, ready to face whatever the future held.